Welcome to our first ever Summer Weather Safety and Preparedness webinar for our Weather Ready Nation ambassadors. My name is Lisa Schmidt, and I'm one of the meteorologists and ambassador care representatives at our office here in Chanhassen. Also with me today are meteorologist Jacob Beitlich and Brent Hewitt, who will be presenting the weather safety and preparedness portions of the webinar. We are so pleased to have you join us today in preparation for the upcoming severe weather season, and we hope you will get some useful takeaways from today's session. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, you can type them in the chat box on the right, and we will be taking them at the end as well. We will also send out the slides from the webinar. Next slide, please, Jacob. The image that you see here on the right is a picture from the entryway of our office. Those of you who have had the opportunity to visit us have been able to find your organization's name on a raindrop. This wall is our version of a donor wall and a reminder to our staff and visitors of the importance of our Weather Ready Nation ambassadors. Before we jump into the safety and preparedness material of today's webinar, we wanted to reiterate the opportunities available to you as ambassadors. While many of the relationship benefits are intangible, there are several resources we want to make sure you're aware of. First off, we have a ton of outreach content that our communications office has created. We shared some of these materials with you last week during Severe Weather Awareness Week, but there's much more available to you. And if there's ever a time that you're looking for something that you don't see on our website, please reach out to us. We encourage you to share this content throughout your organizations, groups, and even communities, and in so doing, you are quite likely saving someone's life from a natural disaster. Another thing we wanted to point out is our willingness to help you assess or even create your safety and sheltering plans for your home and office. We have folks in our office that are experts and do this already with our Storm Ready program, so we'd be more than happy to help if you let us know. Ambassadorship also opens up opportunities for us to collaborate with your organization on approaches to strengthen resilience against extreme weather and water events. So let us know if you have ideas. And last but not least, there are networking opportunities on social media and in person as well. Obviously, those are a bit tricky right now with the exception of social media, but in the past, we've held special in-office events for ambassadors, and we hope to do that again in the future. And with that, I'll pass it off to Jacob, who will be covering the first part of the webinar.
All right, thank you, Lisa, and thank you for that introduction. So we'll talk a little bit about safety and preparedness here before we jump into the specific hazards of that summer has to offer. So the first one is home emergency kits. How can you create your own? Find out what items are crucial for you and your family during an emergency. Add those items to a bag in a waterproof storage container with a clear label. And finally, make sure everyone in your household knows where the emergency kit is stored. And one thing we want to emphasize here is to customize your kit. For example, if you're someone that needs medication on a regular basis, make sure you have some extra medication in your emergency kit. Maybe if you have someone with small kids, have a few games, something to entertain them, maybe some books, so that when you go to your safe place, you can manage the situation a little bit better. So the graphic we have on the right shows a few examples of things that you can have in your kit. But again, we really want to emphasize that you customize it to meet your needs. And for more information, you can visit the link at the bottom, ready.gov/kit. So where can you get your forecast information? You can grab it off of our website, and you can also use our mobile site, mobile.weather.gov, and that will give you point-specific information for your location, and you can use a 5-digit zip code to get you where you need to be. So as far as using our mobile site, you can create a widget on your smartphone using the mobile.weather.gov. It's not exactly the same as an app. We don't have an app, but it does offer a lot of functionality for use on your mobile device. And there are more directions on how to do that at the bottom link there. And again, we will share that with the presentation. So moving on, how can you receive warnings? We emphasize that you have more than one way to receive an alert. So thunderstorms can strike during any time of day, And threats for severe weather move fast and require multiple updates to the warning information. So that's why we'd like you to have multiple ways to receive warning information, and that'll help guarantee that you are aware of the potential severe weather threat. So again, referencing the graphic on the right, you have outdoor sirens, you have your local TV and radio, you have your smartphone, NOAA weather radio, and family, friends, and coworkers. So I'll talk a little bit outdoor sirens. Those are geared toward people that are outside. And the point of them is to sound the alarm and say, move inside, seek further information. A lot of people think that a siren is going to wake you up in the middle of the night. And for some it might, but it's not designed to do that. So that's why that is just one aspect of how you can receive warnings. You should make sure like a weather radio will go off. You can program that when severe weather strikes, and also the wireless emergency alerts and your favorite weather app. So let's talk about the wireless emergency alerts, or WEA. WEA alerts are sent out to cell phones when selected warnings have been issued by your local National Weather Service office, and they contain important information about potential severe weather threats for your location. So there's a few types listed here: tornado warnings, flash flood warnings, and it used to be that all flash flood warnings would trigger a WEA alert. That has been changed, and Brent will talk a little bit about that later in the presentation. So now only the higher end flash flooding events that we consider considerable or catastrophic, those are the only ones that are going to alert your phone. We also have extreme wind warnings, which are tied to tropical storms and hurricanes. Dust storm warnings, snow squall warnings. Not listed are tsunami and hurricane warnings, and things of that nature. So if you're in the upper Midwest, if you're in Minnesota and Wisconsin, really the only warnings you're going to get on your phone are tornado warnings and flash flood warnings. And if you're a national ambassador and you have reaches farther out, like near the coast, or if you're traveling to the coast, that's where you'll get kind of those tropical warnings that I mentioned: hurricane, extreme wind, things of that nature. And then if you're down in the desert, that's where you'll get your dust storm warnings. So the National Weather Service is very cognizant of how powerful these alerts are, and we keep revising them to not overwarn, for lack of better words. So for example, the first year that we did this, a blizzard warning was included in this. And so from a National Weather Service perspective, we try to issue blizzard warnings with a day, maybe a day and a half lead time, so you can plan and prepare for them. And so there would be blue sky, nothing going on, and people's phones would go off saying there's a blizzard warning. Well, it wasn't in effect until the following day or so. So we revised that, same with flash flood warnings. And if you have your mobile device, you go into your settings and you go into your notifications and scroll down to the bottom, and that's where you can see your alerts. So there's public alerts, there's government alerts, and there's Amber alerts. And those are by default turned on. So we want to make sure that people keep them turned on, because they can definitely be a lifesaver. And I'll touch more on that a little bit later in this presentation. So here are the specific weather topics that we'll be covering today: severe weather, including lightning, strong wind, large hail, and tornadoes. Brent will cover flooding and heavy rain, and he'll also talk about heat safety, and mentioned some aspects of how you can stay safe from the extreme heat. All right. So we'll start off with lightning. What is the risk? Well, thunderstorms are very common across the upper Midwest. They occur, several days out of the year, and especially in the upper Midwest. And so we're not trying to have people completely avoid going outside. What we want people to do is be able to manage the weather that we have. So although the chance of getting struck by lightning is very low, the lasting effects are serious. and lightning can strike several miles away from a storm. It doesn't have to be right on top of you to get struck by lightning. It can be several miles away. So what can you do? If you see lightning or if you hear thunder, find shelter in a building or a car, stay away from windows and doors, wait 30 minutes after you see the last strike of lightning, or 30 minutes after you hear the last rumble of thunder before going back outside. So some of the graphics that are available to you at the links below are shown on the right. For example, safe fishing. There's a lot of people that like to get out on the lake, get some fresh air, and lightning can strike you when you're out on the lake. So we encourage people that if they hear thunder or if they see lightning, to move off the lake, go wait in your vehicle until a storm has passed, wait 30 minutes, and then resume what you were doing. Outdoor activities, if you're playing sports, if you're outside, the slogan is when thunder roars, go indoors. But for those that are hearing impaired, we also have the slogan, if you see a flash, dash inside. So the main thing that we want to get people to do is when there's a thunderstorm to move inside and you'll be fine, you'll be safe. So wind safety, what is the risk from thunderstorm winds? Well, thunderstorms can produce damaging wind. A severe thunderstorm has winds of 58 miles per hour or greater. But some of the higher end severe thunderstorms can produce winds of 80 miles an hour or more. And winds that are this strong can knock over trees, power lines, or cause damage to buildings. So the picture you see on the right is from a grain bin setup. And although those are pretty strong, severe thunderstorm winds came through and did a lot of damage. So this shows and illustrates that when you have a severe thunderstorm warning, that we want you to move inside a sturdy structure, because if you're outside, if that tin is flying around, that could be really dangerous. Next up is hail safety. Thunderstorms can produce large hail. By definition, a severe thunderstorm has hail that is 1 inch or greater, but some storms can produce hail that's larger than baseballs. This can cause damage to cars, roofs, vegetation, and anyone caught outside. So the picture on the right shows some really large hailstones, and those are fairly rare, but they do happen, a few times a year across the upper Midwest. So they're certainly not too uncommon. And maybe in your specific location, you haven't been hit by a significant hailstorm recently, but they do happen annually, several times a year across the upper Midwest. So what can you do? Seek shelter in a sturdy structure. The interior room on the lowest floor of a house is the safest spot. That'll keep you away from windows and away from doors. A car is okay, but parked away from trees, get low, and cover your head. So we really want to emphasize that parking away from trees, moving away from trees. If you're outside, if you're not in a vehicle, you want to move away from trees because they can be struck by lightning. And if you're next to them, then you're at risk of getting struck by lightning. And also, if you have strong winds, the trees can fall. And that's how a lot of injuries and fatalities happen. So I want to share a story from Southeast Minnesota of a few years ago. And it's a really neat story and shows how Weather Ready Nation ambassadors can make a difference without really doing too much extra than what they normally do. So in Southeast Minnesota, there were severe thunderstorms moving through, and this was on July 5th. So it wasn't on the 4th of July, but it was during that weekend. And there were some people at a campground. They were in a tent. And the person that was managing the campground got an alert for a severe thunderstorm on their phone. And they went out to their tenants and they said, we have a severe thunderstorm. Really want you to move inside our shelter area. And some people were a little apprehensive to do so, but he was persistent. He said, no, there's strong winds coming. Let's get out of this tent, get out of your camper, and come inside the shelter area. Well, there were two people that were in a tent, and they, with some reluctance, did follow orders, and they went inside the safe shelter area, and a large cottonwood tree, like 2 feet in diameter, fell on that tent and split it right down the middle. So if they would have been inside, they would have been definitely hurt and most likely killed. So if you're someone that manages people and is kind of responsible for their safety when they're on your property, you definitely don't want to make the headline news. So this is just an example of someone who took their job seriously, took people's safety seriously, and they got an alert for weather on their phone. They had a plan in place. They notified everyone. The people went into their safe shelter area. And you probably didn't hear about this story until right now because they did everything right. So a really neat example of how a Weather Ready Nation ambassador can make a difference. So we have a severe thunderstorm watch and a severe thunderstorm warning. And I know those are ordered by the warning first and then the watch, and that's just in terms of severity. But I'm going to start with the watch because as meteorologists, we can recognize what weather patterns produce severe thunderstorms. So when we see those weather patterns setting up, maybe 1 or 2, 1 or the day of, we can mention severe thunderstorms are possible in the forecast, and that starts that planning. Starts you thinking about, okay, what should I do if strong to severe thunderstorms develop? Well, when we get closer to their development, say an hour or 2 ideally before the first storm develops and then maybe moves into your area, we'll issue what's called a severe thunderstorm watch. And that means that severe storms are possible in the near future. We think they're going to develop. We're pretty confident that the atmosphere is supportive of severe thunderstorms, large hail, damaging wind in the near future. So when you see a watch, that means you should stay tuned to forecast updates and monitor sky conditions at your location. And lastly, know where to take shelter. So that it can be summed up best by be prepared. Think about, all right, if there was a storm that came through, where would I go? How long would it take me to get there? What steps would I need to take in order to make sure that I'm safe? As we get a little bit closer to severe weather, if a storm has developed and we think it's producing large hail or damaging wind, we'll issue a severe thunderstorm warning. And that means severe weather is happening or imminent. When a severe thunderstorm warning is issued, that's when we want people to take shelter. So go to your safe spot, take shelter immediately. And then when you're there, check for forecast updates as conditions can change rapidly. So the best way to sum that up, what to do with it when there's a severe thunderstorm warning, is to take action. So here's an example of a map that you might see on your weather app or on the TV, or maybe if you go to our web page. And this shows a severe thunderstorm watch shaded in pink and a severe thunderstorm warning in yellow. So we'll put out the watch for a larger area because that means severe storms are possible in that area. Be prepared. Weather conditions favor thunderstorms capable of producing large hail or damaging wind at this location on the map. If you look at house number 1, they're in the severe thunderstorm warning. So it's a little bit smaller, it's a little bit focused. That's where we want people to take action because large hail or damaging wind is occurring or will occur shortly at this location on the map. So that is just a visual aid describing kind of the difference between watch coverage and warning coverage and what you should do. So now we'll move on to tornado safety. So what is the risk? Although the chance of being hit by a tornado is low, they can completely destroy buildings. So even weak tornadoes have wind speeds of 65 to 90 miles an hour, and those speeds are enough to destroy a mobile home or an outbuilding. By an outbuilding, we mean a shed or a barn, things of that nature, things that just aren't meant to withstand very strong winds. So again, strong tornadoes are quite rare, but they can completely destroy even well-built structures. So weak tornadoes are a little bit more common. Strong tornadoes are rare. We really want you to take action when there's a tornado warning. So what type of action? What can you do? Well, seek shelter in an interior room on the lowest level of a sturdy structure. So not in a shed, not in a mobile home. We want you to get low and cover your head. Stay away from windows and doors because flying debris is the most dangerous part of a tornado. It's all that stuff that it's picking up and throwing around that's moving at really fast speeds that when it hits you, it can do a lot of damage. So get low, cover your head, stay away from windows and doors. And if you're in a car, again, park away from trees, get low, and cover your head. So it takes pretty strong winds to roll and lift a car. So a lot of these weaker tornadoes, they'll be able to throw debris, break the windows of a car, maybe slide it a little bit, maybe roll it on its side. But if you're the only place you have to go is in a car, park away from trees because you don't want trees falling on your automobile and smashing it. So park away from trees, get as low as you can, cover your head as best you can. So I want to share another story about how wireless emergency alerts, or WEA, took a bad situation and kept it from being a horrible situation. So the picture on the right is courtesy of the Red Barn Farm. And for those of you that aren't familiar with that, it's a outdoor pizza, wood-fired pizza place, wedding venue, just a really neat spot for folks to go out in the country. And it was destroyed by a tornado on September 20th of 2018. So when this was going on, these storms were moving at speeds of around 65 to 70 miles an hour. They were really flying. And tornado warnings were issued because we saw these storms were capable and we had pretty high confidence that they were going to be producing a tornado. So the Weather Service in the Twin Cities issued a tornado warning, and there were 13 people in the barn that were celebrating a 70th birthday party for one of the relatives that owned the barn. So there were 13 people in there. They got the alert on their phone. Everyone's phone made that awful sound and went off. So they looked at their phone. They got the alert. They had enough lead time to take shelter underground in what would have been the old milk house. So pretty much submerged underground, and it was surrounded by bricks. So a really safe spot. They all went down in there. The tornado came through, completely destroyed the barn above them. And then they all came out unharmed, no injuries or anything. And that would have been a drastically different story had they not taken shelter underground. So a really neat example of how what WEA, those weather emergency alerts, can save lives because they go to people's phones. You have your phone on you. It's almost instant delivery of severe weather notification. So as a Weather Ready Nation ambassador, really encourage you to keep your WEA turned on. And also mention that if you have a campground or something, say, hey, folks, just make sure you have your WEA turned on so that you guys get severe weather alerts. And that will help build some credibility too if you have to force people to take shelter. So similar to the slide a little bit ago, tornado watch and tornado warning. Again, we've done studies and we've noticed that certain weather patterns produce a majority of the tornadoes across the upper Midwest and across the country for that matter. So when we see those weather patterns setting up, when we see what's called instability, meaning you'll have rising air, and wind shear, meaning that you have a favorable setup for rotating thunderstorms that can produce tornadoes, we'll issue a tornado watch. So that means conditions are favorable, for the development of thunderstorms capable of producing tornadoes. Again, we try to do that 1 or 2 hours before the first storm even develops. And when you see a tornado watch for your location, what you should do is you should stay informed in case a warning is issued, and again, know where to take shelter. So the best way to think about it is tornado watch means be prepared. Tornado warning, that's a little bit, again, more high end. That means that a thunderstorm is capable of producing a tornado, or a thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado is imminent. So that can either be radar indicated. When we see a storm develop and we see that rotation tighten up, we're going to want to get the warning out several minutes before it produces a tornado. That's the ideal world, is where we give people who are directly in the path of the storm plenty of time to seek shelter. So that's what you should do. You should take shelter now when there's a tornado warning. Go to a basement or an interior room, get low, cover your head, and stay informed of forecast updates. So when there's a tornado warning issued for your location, you should already be thinking, all right, what would I do if there was a tornado warning issued? So when it happens, all you got to do is take a few seconds, go to where you need to go, and then once you're there, that's where you can seek further information and stay informed of forecast updates. So here's another example of what this would look like on a map, either on your TV station or on your weather app or on our web page. And so the yellow shaded counties show an idealistic picture of what a tornado watch would look like, again, covering a larger area. So if you're in house number 2, that means tornadoes are possible, be prepared. Weather conditions favor thunderstorms capable of producing tornadoes at this location on the map. If you're in house number 1, then you're in that red area, that red box. That means you're under a tornado warning. So a tornado is expected. You should be seeking shelter immediately. A tornado is occurring or will occur shortly at this location on the map. And then finally on the lower right, this is an example of what the WEA or wireless emergency alerts would look like on your phone. So it'll pop up, you'll see a banner and it'll say emergency alert, tornado warning for this area until such and such a time. Take shelter immediately, check local media. So that'll pop up and that's another way for you to get a tornado warning. So with that, I'll hand it off to Brent. He'll be taking it from here. And again, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box and we'll go over them at the end of the presentation. Take it away, Brent.
Thank you, Jake. So hopefully everyone can hear me. And now I'm going to talk about a few less visible risks during summer and severe weather, that being flood safety and flood hazards and heat safety and heat hazards. So flooding is one of the more significant threats during summertime. So what is the risk? Thunderstorms can produce very heavy rainfall and can lead to too much runoff that leads to flash flooding. And flash flooding can occur in a span of hours versus, say, river flooding or other types of flooding, which can take days. And this can cause low-lying areas, like the image here, to turn into muddy ponds several feet deep in a matter of hours. So if you lived or worked in one of these businesses here, like this image, and you were away for the day, you came back and your business or home is under 5-6 feet of water and everything you own is now ruined or damaged. So flash flooding is very important in flash flood safety. But another important thing is not only is standing water a threat, but flowing water as well. If you're in an area with more terrain, only 6 inches of flowing water can knock an adult off their feet, and 12 inches can knock a vehicle over or move it off or brush it off a road or cliff or something along those types of risk. So flowing water is very powerful and can knock over vehicles, humans, with very little water. So what can you do for flood safety? We're going to move on to the next slide now. And it is important to know if you are in a floodplain. If you're in a floodplain ahead of time. This is something you can or should know about, and if you don't, you can look it up or find some resources online. There's going to be resources included in the email and attached to this presentation when we share at the end of it. And find out if you're in a floodplain, what is the quickest way to higher ground if you are living in a floodplain or your business is in a floodplain, and which roads flood first. That is a very important thing. I grew up in an area where there's a lot of low-lying roads that flood a lot quicker than other roads. You want to prepare a plan for your home, your family, and your pets and business, whomever is affected here. If you have that plan ahead of time, you can enact that plan in a very timely manner where you're not wasting much time, because flash flooding, like I said, span of hours and minutes versus days or weeks for, say, something like river flooding. And you never want to drive through floodwaters, whether you're in a semi truck, a pickup truck, or especially an SUV crossover or car, since they're very low to the ground. And like I said, just 12 inches of fast moving water can sweep a car or truck off the road. And thunderstorms, 6 inches of flowing water can sweep you off a feet. So you want to avoid areas with flowing water and avoid areas with ponding water. You don't know what's under that water. The roadway could be washed out, or if you wanted to drive through it and drive around a road closed sign, and then the bridge or road is washed away, and then you're going to put yourself in a dangerous situation where it requires first responders to put themselves in a dangerous situation. So on to the next slide, we're going to talk the difference between a flood watch and a flood warning. Very similar to a thunderstorm and tornado watch versus tornado warning. We have put in numerous hours and research studies over the years about certain weather patterns that are more prone to flooding. So that's where we can issue an area of a flood watch 2 or 3 days out of an event. That helps everyone prepare from your home to your business or an outdoor event, so that there's a plan in place that can be enacted in a timely manner. And a flood watch is, again, issued when flooding is possible. Stay tuned to your TV, your radio. You can check out our website for the latest, and be ready to enact your flood plan, your flood safety plan. And a flood warning is issued when flooding is happening or is imminent, meaning within the next few hours. So if you receive a flood warning on your WIA, wireless emergency alert, you want to be prepared to enact quickly. You need to take action. Move to higher ground, and again, never drive through flooded roads with flowing or ponding water, because you do not know what could be beneath the road. The road could be washed out, the bridge could be washed out, and again, that would put you into a dangerous situation for those involved in the vehicle. Moving on to the next slide, we're going to talk a little bit more about what has changed with flash flood warnings. Like Jake was talking about earlier in the presentation, we take feedback every year and try to make changes to our warnings and what is sent out over wireless emergency alerts, and how we can make them more effective so we are not over warning certain situations. And that just was one of those things that we were doing with flash flood warnings. A lot of flash flood warnings were very minor, where sure, you want to avoid the flooded roadway, but they weren't necessarily a life-threatening situation. But those would be countless. Those are issued several times a year. And this image here is an example from last July, where you had a flash flooding situation in Minneapolis. So what has changed? Well, most base tagged flash flood warnings will not trigger your wireless emergency alert now. So about 80% of these will not trigger your emergency alerts, where you're not over warning for situations that may not need that wireless emergency alert. So what is going to be alerted now? Well, WIA alerts are going to move to considerable and catastrophic damage tags, meaning if you get a WIA for flash flooding that is a considerable or catastrophic tag, that either means you're going to be in a situation with unusual severity of flash flooding, that impact is imminent or ongoing, and you need to take urgent action to protect your life and your lives of others, as well as your property and business. And now The other one, catastrophic, is even more rare. These are likely issued only once or twice a year, or very, very few times a year for the whole country, not just Minnesota or Wisconsin. And these are issued when there is an ongoing threat to life and property, and that the floodwaters have risen to levels that are rarely seen for that region or area. And I've included the whole fact sheet down here for all the changes, but know that if you're getting a base flash flood warning, that is not going to trigger your WIA alert or your weather radio. That if you are receiving a flash flood warning that is alerting your wireless emergency alert, that it means you need to take urgent action, as it is a very unusual or rare event that is putting the area that you're currently in under considerable or catastrophic threat that is imminent. So moving on to the next slide, I'm going to talk now about heat safety. And heat safety is another one of those less visual threats that is very, very important in the summertime. I mean, when you go outside, you can't really visualize heat, right? So what can we do to help you and help others? So we've now developed or using a new scale that is included, the wet bulb globe temperature forecast versus the heat index. The heat index is one of those things you hear whether you're watching your local news, follow a local meteorologist or weather agency or company online. So let's talk about your heat index. And that is a traditional measure of what temperature feels like to the human body. That includes only your temperature and relative humidity, as well as measured in shade. So a heat index is a useful measure, but not a great measure. So what else is there? The wet bulb globe temperature. The wet bulb globe temperature is forecast the impacts of sunny, hot, and muggy days. And that uses, the wet bulb globe temperature uses a measure of heat stress in direct sunlight versus shade of the heat index scale, which the wet bulb globe temperature uses that direct sunlight. It takes into account temperature, humidity, wind speed, sun angle, and cloud cover all into one measure or scale that helps us better communicate ongoing risk. And various military agencies, OSHA, and many others use wet bulb globe temperature as a guide to manage workload in direct sunlight as opposed to heat index, as it can better reflect the toll of heat on the human body. Moving on to the next slide, we can see who is at risk. Of course, anyone can be at risk, but especially young children, elderly, and outdoor workers and athletes are some of the highest groups that are at risk due to the extended period of time outdoors or due to the strength of their bodies. So when, say, you have young children outside at an amusement park or a outdoor event, or elderly, you need to know the risk. And you need, what can you do to off-put the risk? Limit the outdoor activities if you can, drink plenty of water, take breaks, know your heat index or wet bulb globe temperature and what that translates to. You can take breaks in 15 to 20-minute intervals where you drink water, get into shade to cool down, maybe step indoors where you have air conditioning or a cooling room. And for outdoor workers, for like construction workers that are outdoors 8 to 12 hours a day, it's even more important that they have plenty of water, shade, and ability to cool off so that they're not putting themselves at risk of something like heat exhaustion or, in worst case, heat stroke. And I've attached a link here that will provide more graphics and information on heat safety. And moving on to the next slide, kind of tying into everything we've gone through so far is recreational safety. And recreational safety is very important for summertime, especially up in the upper Midwest areas like Minnesota and Wisconsin. We go through a long winter here, so we like to go outside in the summer and enjoy outdoor activities. So some safety tips for outdoor activities include develop an evacuation plan and make sure everyone in your group or knows where you're sheltering at. If you're going camping, you gotta know where your common shelter place is at so everyone is on the same page and can follow your plan in an effective manner. You are not safe from lightning in a tent or under trees. Trees can be hit by lightning and either shed branches or in some cases cause them catch on fire and cause damage to anything near that area. So it's very important to know, do not go under trees if there's an ongoing thunderstorm or there's a thunderstorm in the area. You see your flash of lightning or you hear a roar of thunder, get inside. You're somewhere safe if it's a common shelter area like Jake referenced from his camping story, or if you were just outside of your own house or business, go inside until 30 minutes after. So you can also find a sturdy building for shelter. If you can't find one, you go into your hard-topped vehicle and drive it away from trees, park somewhere in the open where there's not any potential falling hazards like trees or say flagpoles or anything that could damage the vehicle and injure you or the others in your vehicle. And make sure your windows are up. You don't want your windows down because that can cause flying debris to come directly into the vehicle in cases of thunderstorm wind or tornado. So moving on to the next slide. Some more recreational safety is more going from camping to maybe you're out spending a day on a lake going boating. And many of the same things apply as the previous slides. If you hear thunder or see lightning while boating, head immediately to the shore. Lightning can strike in the middle of a lake, or even worse, if you get caught on the lake with an ongoing thunderstorm, you're putting everyone at risk for thunderstorm winds or hail that can cause a capsize. And that would be a very, very unfortunate event that you do not want to happen. You are not safe from lightning in a boat. And one of the most important things is having a way to receive warnings when you're on the water, whether it is a NOAA all hazards weather radio that is recommended, that covers all areas that lack cell phone coverage, or a commercial power source. So having NOAA weather radio is very important. You get the same alerts that you would through a wireless emergency alert. And some other boating tips are high winds and waves. You don't necessarily need to have a thunderstorm to have significant waves. You can have a very windy day that can cause giant waves, whether you're spending time out on a great lake or a larger lake that can be at risk of large waves. It could be a beautiful sunny day, but still have those waves. Know your water temperature. This time of year, you do not want to be swimming, but doesn't mean all lakes warm at the same rate. Some of the bigger lakes can be very cold into June and July, where you could be at risk for things like hypothermia and other cold water related issues. So know your water temperature and then remain calm and control your breathing if you think you're at risk of hypothermia. So moving on to the next slide, wrapping this up, we've covered some very important topics from severe thunderstorms to flash flooding and flooding safety and heat safety to outdoor recreational safety. So what are the Weather Enterprise resources that we have for you? We have resources from across the Weather Enterprise, including links to commercial, academic, and government products and services, including severe weather alerts, custom weather forecast and information, help from weather-related insurance claims or cases, weather data software, weather instruments and products such as those NOAA weather radios. And we've included a link here to weather.gov/enterprise where it has a whole spectrum of resources we've put together for your use. And many of you may be on this list already, but if you'd like to be added, email the wrn.feedback@noaa.gov and they'll put you on that email list where you'll get Weather Enterprise resources emailed out to your business or organization on a monthly basis. And now moving on to the last slide, we're going to open up for any questions and comments that may have come in over the last 45 minutes. And I'd like to say thank you for attending our presentation. I'm going to end it on this beautiful slide of our Weather Ready Nation Ambassador wall here at our Chanhassen office. Jake, Lisa,
wanted to reiterate thanks to everybody for joining us today. You can either ask questions in the window here, or you feel free to reach out to us through email with any questions or resource requests that you may have. We'll just stay on the line here for a couple minutes and see if you have any questions. Alrighty, so we did have one question come in earlier from Mark. Mark, thanks for your question. Asking whether there was an app that has better alerts. I think this is regarding severe weather alerts than others. Given we aren't able to really recommend one particular app in general, I want to refer back to that Weather Enterprise resource list that Brent just showed you. There's a whole slew of different weather apps available to you on there. Many of them are free and great apps. Just because they're free doesn't mean they're not good. So I would just direct you to check out that list of resources that we've created for you. And then if you have any questions regarding those in particular, feel free to email us about those.